Hey, welcome back. Today we got properties of real numbers and absolute value. Yesterday we worked on real numbers and what those were. They were doing properties and also absolute value, and I think you have a clue what that is. So let's get going real quick. Here's the properties we're gonna focus on for chapter one that we're doing. First of all, is the commutative property, the most mispronounced math word in Tennessee. Most people want to say commutative, but if you notice, there's no N in it. It's commutative property of addition and multiplication. All it says is it doesn't matter which order you add or which order you multiply, you get the same thing. 3 plus 7, 7 plus 3. 3 times 7, 7 times 3. Exactly the same result because it is commutative. Does not work for subtraction, does not work for division, just addition and multiplication. Associative means with addition and multiplication also, it doesn't matter how you group your numbers, it doesn't matter which ones you add first or multiply first, you get the same result. So the order in which you do the operation when there's more than two numbers, doesn't matter which way you group them, you're going to get the same result either way. That's called the associative property of addition and works with multiplication. Again, does not work with subtraction, doesn't work with division. Not many things do. The next one's called the additive identity, or some people call it the zero property, because what you're doing here is you're actually adding zero. If you add zero to a number, it's the same thing. Hello. But that's what's called the identity property, because it keeps the same identity. If you add zero to a number, the number does not change identities. The additive inverse property, inverse means opposite. That's the true meaning of the word inverse. So it's adding opposites. If you add two opposites together, you get zero. And again, it doesn't matter which order you add them in. They're opposites, you're going to get zero every time. So two different ones. Additive identity, it keeps the same identity. Additive inverse, inverse means opposite. And so you add opposites together. Now a couple of multiplication properties. The multiplicative identity is multiplying by 1. Just like the additive identity was adding 0 because it did not change the identity of the number, multiplicative identity is 1 because it does not change the identity of the number. It stays the same, multiplying by 1. Multiplicative inverse, a little bit different. You're not multiplying opposites this time. Multiplicative inverse is a fancy word for reciprocal. So whenever you hear reciprocal or multiplicative inverse, that's a lot of syllables. It's the same thing. And the last property for today is distributive, and this is the one you use most in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. It's where you take a number multiplied by a grouping symbol and you actually distribute that number. You multiply that number by everything inside the parentheses or brackets or whatever grouping symbol you may have. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 properties we're going to deal with tomorrow. And pause the video if you need to, write them down, make sure you got the names especially, and we'll deal with those tomorrow. What is absolute value? Most people don't know. Most people, when I ask that question, the first thing they say is, oh, it makes everything positive, which is true. But the reason why it makes everything positive is because the real definition is this right here. It's the distance from 0 on the number line. And what they're going to do to you in your assignment tomorrow is they're going to ask you, you know what absolute value bars look like this right here. What is the absolute value of negative 3? What they're asking you is how far away is negative 3 from 0 on the number line, and hopefully you know it's 3 away. Distance cannot be negative. That's why. Distance can never be negative. You can't say, I'm going to go 200 miles this way, but negative 300 miles this way. It's impossible. You've never seen a ruler with negative numbers on it. Distance can't be negative. Absolute value of 271. How far away is 271 from 0? 271. Really hard stuff there, but you need to make sure you got that definition down. One thing about absolute value that you need to think about, and I'm not, this part right here, I took a picture of this out of your book, and it's a great sentence or two right there. But if you'll just listen to me for just a second, I think it is better, and just try to figure out what this says. Basically, it's saying this. If you have the absolute value of a number, it equals itself if the number is positive. That's what we saw on the last slide. If the number is positive, it equals itself. If the number is negative, and this is a weird looking notation right here. If the number inside the absolute value is negative, you get the opposite of that number. You get a positive number. The last line I think we had negative 3. Well, the absolute value of negative 3 was 3, which is the opposite of negative 3. So that's what this is saying up here. The absolute value of a negative number is the opposite of itself. I think the last slide we also had 271, which is positive. If you take the absolute value of a positive number, it is itself. Okay, so that's what the graphic up here is saying, and that's also what the sentence in there is saying. Notice it says non-negative. It doesn't say zero, every number or positive, because absolute value of 0 would be 0. So that's not the opposite, of itself. You can't get the opposite of 0. So anyway, really good slide there. Watch it again if you need to, but pretty easy concept, I think. Last slide of the day. They're going to ask you to find the distance between 2 points in the number line. And all you do, and this is one time in your life, it doesn't matter which order you do this in, but that's what absolute value, one thing absolute value is for, is finding distance between 2 points. You can do a minus b and take the absolute value, or you can do b minus a and take the absolute value. And the reason why the order doesn't matter is because you're going to take the absolute value, which means it's going to be positive anyway. So when they ask me this question right here, find the distance between -2 and 3 on a number line, you can do it this way. You can do -2 minus 3, which would give you -5, and the absolute value of -5 is 5. Okay, you can do that, or you could go the other way. You could say 3 minus -2. I'm assuming you can do that operation okay. 3 minus -2 is really 3 plus 2, which is 5. The absolute value of 5 is 5. So one use for absolute value is to be able to find 2 points, the distance between 2 points in a number line. We'll be looking at other uses as we go on, but for today, that's it. And thank you for listening. Make sure you have your notes with you tomorrow, and I'll see you in class.